All right, y'all, take my quiz. Anyway, okay, so here's what I'm needing to figure out because I don't know how reputable this source is. I mean, this is just like a journalistic blog of sorts in stating that his DNA is found um, around Africa, particularly among the Imbo. Is that how you say that? Imbo people of Cameroon. What I need to know is, are the DNA sequences that they found or samples that they found from these people older than Perry's DNA? I mean, Perry, in and of himself, is, a quote unquote foundational Black American, who just so happens to have this chromosome that predates the oldest chromosome that we believe we've had in science, anyway. Um, the quote unquote first Adam. So he has some of the oldest DNA that is available or accessible in a sort of like modern human, right? Not to say that there aren't probably older, of course, sequences or DNA samples from people who've come before him. We don't know if there are any currently living. We don't know. But I want to know if these people's DNA that was found and compared to his to find similarity are older than Perry's. Because the claim is that his DNA, right now, again, being the oldest in the world that we found compared to the first Adam, is native essentially to North America, even though it can be found in other parts of the world, namely Africa, on the continent of Africa. So it challenges our sort of origin story of human beings. And I think I may have mentioned this in the previous post, but, and even scripture kind of speaks to the fact that technically we did not originate from, or the Garden of Eden, rather, was not on the continent of Africa itself. And so, yeah, and I know there's some claims out there that like North America is actually Africa or Egypt, and like because there's some mounds or what have you that people are calling pyramids. I kind of think that's silly. I don't agree with that. I'm not to be offensive to anyone, but it just kind of logically doesn't make sense. Now, I believe that this landmass has existed just as long as other parts of the world. Um, and there's a lot of ancient history over here that we don't necessarily know about. But again, that's because for a very, very, very long time, and when we go back to antiquity and ancient history and understanding those empires, you can kind of start to see why that is. For a very long time, the focus has been on Babylonian, Medo-Persian, Egyptian interest, Greco-Roman interest, history, focus, right? Not really anything in South America, Central America, North America, or some other parts of the world. And so it's just interesting to me. It is just quite very literally interesting. And it's also beautiful because his family originates from South Carolina, where my family is from, my mother's side. And yeah. Yeah. So, interesting stuff. And it can get kind of confusing for sure, because when you think about even the time of the Israelites in Egypt being in captivity, but also marrying and intermixing with some of the Egyptians, they looked very similar, shared in similar complexions and the complexion varieties, still very dark skinned in some cases, tawny hued in some cases, people. But when I think about like people like just human nature and how groups of people interact with one another, even in like systems of servitude. It's interesting because if you think about the flood, the parting of the sea, which I believe is like really the Reed Sea, even though we call it the Red Sea because of the waters changing and being turned to blood, essentially. Um, when I think about some of the people displaced who were Egyptian um, ethnically, and those who would have been traveling with some of the Israelites because of having married them or what have you, even though we know only a few made it out of that in the journey in the wilderness, again, I still think about some that may have been left behind in the land of Egypt, not necessarily Pharaoh and his army that was consumed by the sea. And then you think about their circumventing other places in the world or the globe rather, and going to other places in the world, and just kind of like the intricacies of that history and what life actually looked like. Do y'all get what I'm saying? Like the day to day, or like more details about that actual experience and how that would have played out. When I think about that, it's just really interesting to play around with, those thoughts and ideas and imagine, what that was like and where those people would have gone. Because I think that, and there's been proof and evidence to that fact, that many people on the continent of Africa would not necessarily be considered African or native to Africa. Even though they may look alike, again, even though they may be skin folk. There are tons of different ethnic groups. Tons. DNA, genetics are different from ethnicity. And there are many different ethnogeneses that were happening even in that time. Because you've had the intermixing of people for a long time. And you had life happening over on these lands probably for as long, according to this, longer potentially, in the Americas as we see in Africa. And the point I was trying to make is that because there were people on the continent of Africa, or like traveling through Africa or doing business with Africa or whatever, which at that time would not have even been called Africa, I believe was Kush. Even though we know now that Kush can be, you gotta understand that a lot of these names were duplicated a lot to describe people, places, groups of people. And so they would later go on to, be commonly known as a landmass or a particular place in the land or what have you. Whereas in ancient times or times of antiquity may have been used differently. So just understand that. And then I think for a while, like the whole continent was considered Egypt. So it's just like, I'm still working through a lot of the linguistics and language and how it was employed in those times to describe what, right? But, yeah, even at that time, again, a lot of those people, just because they came from that region doesn't mean that they are descendants of Ham, right? Or natives to that region. And so where some people coming from that region could have and would have traveled the globe, like we see with Ivan Van Sertima's work, and come over to the Americas for business, for trade, whatever. And same with a lot of the darker hued people in Asia. We got to start kind of delving into that too. Predating the Mongols and everything also came over here, and so it's kind of like, yeah, it was a lot happening over here too. And what would become of our captivity over here specifically, like we read about in Obadiah and Deuteronomy, being like nothing no one has ever known could have happened again prior to transatlantic slavery, and in a much more intricate way. And also sought to include, obviously, we've seen that, the indigenous here. And so you have this phenomena of darkly hued people who, again, were native to this land, meaning the original people here, the first people here, that we know of anyway, being involuntarily put into a system of servitude or enslavement and labeled Negro or even African, even though they were not from Africa, just to justify their enslavement. And then you have some who were probably, and I'm also going to be looking into like what the distinctions were. There's a particular text that I have on my social media. Let me see if I can find it. All right, y'all, let's see. So this one, there's also another one, but this might be, oh no, yeah, that's right. So that one, this one is what I was thinking of, what came to my mind's eye. You know, there's also the phenomenon reality that many Indian, quote unquote, or Aborigines enslaved some of the Africans brought over, and some of the darker Indians. So I'm trying to understand too the nuance and distinction between how that was decided, like who would be enslaved and then who would go on to kind of like be beneficiaries of being the perpetuators of that. So it's a lot, y'all. It really really is. Quite literally a lot. I forgot about this. Yeah, check out my personal Instagram as well, which was private for a while, but I removed the photos and stuff of my nieces and family because people crazy. And you know, I've been posting a lot of just the sources that I want to look into. I haven't necessarily yet. All of these, some that I have skimmed, you know, and some that I just want to kind of keep a catalog of for myself somewhere outside of my own servers and on this computer, child, because it's a mess with my documents. So that way I can remember what to go back to and all the things. So yeah, there's that. Oh yeah, this was a good article too. Because again, like I stated, I think in the second video of this series, the narrative is not holistically being spoken about with a lot of the Mexicans in the conversation with regard to the role that their ancestors in that place had in slavery. And this is a good one by a Hispanic, by a Mexican himself, regarding enslaved people in Guadalajara. And we saw also with this work, Africa and, no, not this one. Oh, I need to definitely look into that. Anyway, I don't think I have a picture of that one on here. Africa and Africans in the Making of the Atlantic World by Thornton, where he talked about in the earlier pages of that work, you know, what am I trying to say, y'all? Sorry. He talked about Oaxaca, right? And some of the Mexican cities where slaves were taken to. Those enslaved were taken to. And this one too, The Uncovered Story of Indian Enslavement in America. Yeah, lots of good resources that I definitely want to delve into for sure. This is also a really good one, because I think this source really does make a distinction in regard to the differences of the black races. Again, descendants of Ham, Shem, and even some of Japheth. I mean, they've, were kind of darkly complected people as well. Again, like Kamin, sorry y'all said, I believe that's how you pronounce his last name. The further back you go, the further black you go. Indeed. So yeah, y'all, for my course, my bioethics course, and the quiz that I just took on chapter 7 of Bioethics by J.K. Miles, it was interesting to read about, I think, Gattaca, I think is how you say that. It's a film, I guess, that talks about discrimination between like genetics. Because there's a lot in there about like the CRISPR stuff and editing genes to be resistant against certain diseases and stuff like that. I mean, they really are trying to essentially get to this sort of transhumanistic reality and turning people into freaking cyborgs and all the things. And we already know, again, many of us that are believers, before the deluge or flood, there was a lot going on with much of what we're seeing today. There's nothing new under the sun. A lot of splicing, a lot of, genetic altering and cloning, which, I'm sorry to say, and I don't mean to be rude, but if at this point you don't believe that cloning is a thing, bless your heart. Again, ignorance is bliss for some people. But like, come on. Come on. It is. I know, again, the cognitive dissonance is uncomfortable. I get it. But it is. Sorry to break your heart. And so we're learning about that at my university. And we're going to be getting into even more sinister topics where stuff like that is concerned. And yeah, y'all, it's crazy. It's crazy. Ooh, I'm so excited to invest in this by Beronda Montgomery, When the Trees Testify. Ooh. As we know, plants are living organisms and they hold a lot of memory and energy, and trees, especially those down south, hold a lot with regard to our ancestors' experience in one of the most horrific things that would ever happen on this planet. And y'all know it's past 11, so I am on one. Okay. Oh, because I'm tired. Yeah, this was a paper, Clyde Winters, but he also was the author of this. And so it's kind of like the same thing, but he talks about the Black Native Americans and their experience. And this particular paper, though, that I got off of ResearchGate, and I think I requested a copy from Dr. Winters, the whole thing, because I don't think it was all on there, was really interesting. Very, very interesting stuff. So I'm interested to go back and look through a lot of that. But yeah, y'all, I think this also may talk about some of the Black Native presence and ancestry as well. Yeah, but anyway, I just wanted to share my final thoughts on all of that. And it was so funny. Some of the comments on the videos that I shared about the Black Seminoles was like, there's no such thing as a black native. There's no such thing as a black Indian. Like, you're stupid. You know what you're talking about. There's no such, these people weren't black. These are not black people. Mind you, they're looking at these people being dark skinned, darkly hued, quote unquote black, who today would be categorized racially as a black individual. Seeing this, processing this, perceiving this, and then proceeding to type on their keyboard that these people aren't real. I'm just like, ooh. Delusion is a hell of a drug. It really is for a lot of people. And I know most of these people are bots. Most of these people are, this is literally what they do, is just sit up and cause dissension online. I understand that. Or some type of agent of something. Some type of shield of something. I get it. I do. But even in that, it just sometimes blows my mind that, like, people choose to be this stupid. Sorry. I don't know a better term. But anyway, yeah. And so this is all about the slavery in Mexico. Oh yeah. Also too, check out this source. This was a very interesting read. I haven't gotten through it all the way. Again, this is by one of my favorite authors, Patricia Williams. This is The Miracle of the Black Leg, Notes on Race, Human Bodies, and the Spirit of the Law. Oh gosh. So this black man, this is obviously a more ancient photo, because stuff like this has been happening rather for a long period of time, as we know. But there was a case, actually, a legal case, where a black man had his leg amputated and he was able to keep that material, which unfortunately nowadays, depending on the hospital you go into, should something like this happen to you and what their policies are, they can literally deny you access to your own biological material and tell you, no, you can't have it back, if they feel like it can help them in whatever. Like, they can completely supersede your ability to have your own stuff in your possession, and if they feel like they have use for it. It's ridiculous. But anyway, he got it and kept. Now, I don't know why he kept this, but he kept it in his storage unit. And if y'all know anything about storage units, I know all too well. It's so frustrating. You miss one payment. Listen. Everything you own finna go to auction, right? And so that's what happened in this gentleman's case. Is he missed a payment. His property went to auction, including his leg. And some well-to-do YT gentleman purchased those things, which included this leg. Now, by law, legally, this is now his property. And this is how it's always been, right? How they are justified in the things that they do, because it's business. It's just business. And so the man went, took it to court to try to say, hey, that's my leg. And I'd like it back, because what are you going to even do with that? What is even that? Like, what are you going to do with that? And the guy is literally trying to fight him like, no, it's my leg now. Like, sir, what are you going to do with that? I don't want to know, because from what we're learning in the historical record, there's a lot they would do with that, including eating it. So I'm just like, oh boy, this is a lot. I don't know. I think he lost the case. He lost, and he lost his leg. Sad day. Sad day. when you can't even get your leg. It's, ooh, y'all forgive me. So, yeah, y'all, this is an interesting read. That was funny to me. It's not funny though. It's horrific, but interesting for sure. There was something that I wanted to. I don't know if that is. Let me see. Yeah, this is it. I think. Yes. So this is a portion of the scrolls from the Qumran. That's hard to say. Qumran caves. Um, entitled "The Sons of Light and the war between the sons of light and the sons of darkness." And they quote a lot of, biblical, extra biblical texts like the Pseudepigrapha, Enoch, Jubilees, all the things. I thought the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs and Pseudepigrapha were the same. Or no. No. These are different. All of the patriarchs had their own testaments, I believe. Anyway, and I don't know who translated this. I usually like to find a lot of like R.H. Charles's work, but yeah, I don't know. Oh, here it is. Yeah, so this is the original in Hebrew, those fragments, and then here we go. And of course, those who align themselves with Judaism, which is a completely different religious system and belief, even though it seeks to, like other religions, take portions of the Christian record, which I don't like using that term because I understand how that was employed derogatorily back in those times, in modern day Christianity not really even being aligned with scripture itself. But we know a lot of these individuals, like the scripture says, I know those who say they are Jews and are not. They are the powers that be, if you will, that are gatekeeping a lot of these discoveries and a lot of this knowledge and claiming it to be their own. We understand what's going on, and it just is what it is. And so their names, of course, are going to be on a lot of this stuff. But yeah, check out this scroll. Very interesting. And it talks about, I thought it did. I thought I had, one moment. Here we go. It talks about Levi, Judah, Benjamin, dwelling in the wilderness of the nations. Again, being scattered to the four corners of the earth. And if we're being honest, just off of understanding that, those right now claiming to be the chosen people of God are rarely scattered. They've pretty much stayed in one particular place and even do business and dealings with particular nations of people. So that in and of itself proves that something ain't right about that. Something ain't right about that. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, they mention R.H. Charles here with, I think, the translation or like the Apocrypha or whatever. And so this is a part of what was written on the scrolls to say that particularly these exiles of the Son of Light, because we know that the northern kingdoms, southern kingdoms were split. Benjamin, Levi, Judah, who at these times, those times, and now in today's time, dwell in the wilderness of the nations. And so, meaning, this is how I understand it, that they tend to be the minority or victims, whatever supremacist system is operating, especially in the north, in the nations, because we know the supremacist system in place right now is global. So again, a lot of my own assertions that I'm looking to prove or disprove, but yeah. Interesting stuff. If y'all haven't heard of it, check it out. Also, I did not know, but it makes sense that there's a study known as angelology. Demonology is a study, so I get that. angelology is also studied. So I'm interested to actually delve into some of that. But y'all like, comment, subscribe, share, and be blessed.